A Hanging by George Orwell is essentially a text which gives an extremely well thought out yet well written explanation of power when it goes wrong. So, a hanging is a story about a official from the British Empire who goes and visits a prison in Asia, okay, in Burma. And along the way, okay, this official, who we call the speaker, describes what he sees in this prison. And he describes essentially, like the title says, a man being hanged and what it is that essentially stops him from saving this man who is hanged. Now, the story itself, okay, is kind of simple, all right, but what it does in actuality is it is an actual analysis of power gone wrong, and what it lays out for us is how it is that you get a tyranny. In other words, how do you get a dictatorship? Okay, how do you get a state where uh, the people are oppressed, where a minority rule without any sort of consequences, and power is concentrated in a few hands. Okay, so again, this story is about power gone wrong, and it is a very nice explanation of that. Now, elsewhere on the channel, I already made like an explanation of this text in like a simple way for if you were studying for an exam or something. But today, what I'm going to do, okay, is I'm going to focus on the text itself from this perspective as an analysis of power, and more specifically, an analysis of power gone wrong. Okay, so it opens, excuse me, the text opens by describing what it's like for the prisoners who are in the prison. Okay, it says it was in Burma, a sodden morning of the rains, a sickly like yellow tinfoil was slanting over the high walls. So you can see the light itself, okay, the light itself has become sick, has become unwell. And this is how the story opens. And what this tells you, okay, is that this place is a place where something really, really, really bad, excuse me, really bad has happened, is happening. And so it's beginning to affect the environment itself. Okay, the place itself looks unwell, sick, diseased. And the disease itself, though probably physical, okay, the disease itself, though probably physical along with other things, is not primarily physical yet. The disease is not primarily physical, it's one of corruption, ethics, okay, it's one of immorality. And you see this from the very beginning in that the way the prisoners are kept is in small animal cages, okay? Their cells are extremely small, cramped, and multiple people share a cell, okay, which was made essentially to keep an animal. Now, in terms of what I was talking about, okay, with the relation to power, what you can see is that from the outset, why is it such a big deal? Okay, for example, to have a dictatorship. Now, some people ask the question, a place like, for example, Dubai or Saudi Arabia or any place where you have a monarchy where you can't vote out the king, or a place like China, for example, you have the Communist Party in power and they've been in power for, I don't know, 80, 90, I don't know how many years, a long time. Why is it such a big deal yet? Especially, for example, some people make the argument of, well, the standard of living is high, yet people in Dubai are happy or something, yeah, something like that. The reason is, okay, is that when you allow power to be when you allow power to be concentrated in few hands with no consequences or no way of changing them if they do bad things, what you're doing basically is you're hoping that they don't do bad things yet. You're hoping you're making a sort of, you're having faith in them that they won't do bad things. But the bad thing about this, or the sort of unfortunate reality, is people who pursue power, people who want to be in power, who want to have power over others, oftentimes are not ethical people yet. Generally speaking, people who are ethical, who are good people, they don't want to control others yet. They just want to live their life and let other people live their own lives yet. They're not interested in exerting control and, dominating someone else's life about how they can live, what they can do, what they can't do, punishing them, based on their own ideas and what they want, yeah, selfishly. That's a selfish kind of person who wants this. So what happens when you have these people who are people in charge is that immediately you get dehumanization, okay? Dehumanization. In all the places that I mentioned, though there may be some who are living a nice life, okay, as a spoil of the corruption, a spoil of the tyranny. Like in China, you have, say, a middle class or whatever, you have a bunch of people that are living relatively okay. You always have some people, okay, and when it gets really bad, you have most people who are suffering like in a way which is inhuman, inhuman. For example, in China, you have the Uyghurs who are essentially put into camps. All right, many of them are killed, many of them are harmed. They essentially all their rights are taken, and they are like property of the state in China. In Dubai, place where you think, well, everyone here is good, you have the condition of the workers who live in slums, essentially, hidden away from the fancy lights of the city, who live in slum conditions, and who again have no real rights or power because they're not ever given citizenship. Do you understand? So the point is, okay, whenever this is allowed to happen, whenever tyranny is allowed to go on and power is allowed to be concentrated in a few hands, you will no doubt get some people that are treated not just badly, but are treated extremely badly, like they're not human. Okay. And you see this happening in the prison, in that the prisoners are kept in small animal cages. Okay. They're kept in, they're dehumanized. They're dehumanized. Now, this dehumanization, okay, is done for a number of reasons. One, you could say just in the most basic fundamental reason is that this dehumanization occurs because the people who are in charge, like I said, the people who climb this power pyramid, uh, and of a power structure which is based on here killing, punishing, using power in an abusive way, the people who climb this pyramid are going to be the most abusive, sadistic types of people. Does that make sense? Because it's what they want, yeah. A good normal person does not want to be in this position. Or if they're in this position, they're gonna change things. Yeah, they're gonna change the system, basically. No good person wants to be a dictator. Yeah. They want people to be free, essentially. Yes. So the person who is at the top of this, who's called the superintendent, his what goes on in the prison is an extension of himself, what he feels, believes, and desires. Desires. So the dehumanization of the prisoners is another way of him establishing himself as superior. So in this text, the superintendent views himself as superior to everyone. Okay. And you can see that from his very first words, in which he says, "For God's sake, hurry up, Francis." Francis is sort of like his second in command. It's his sort of deputy or something like that. He's the head of the guards, something like that. The man ought to be dead by this time. Aren't you ready yet? So if you notice, his very first words are a a mention of God. Okay. And what the superintendent, who is again the leader, top of the pyramid, he's the pharaoh in the prison, which is a good metaphor. What his what he does, okay, by mentioning God here is that he is saying that God wants this to happen. What to happen? For the man to be killed. He's saying that God wants this man to die. God wants the man to die. Now, obviously, a simple question that person would need to ask is, how does he know that God wants this man to die? Did God tell him to kill this man? Obviously, the answer is no, right? So the reality is, okay, is that who wants this man to die? It's the superintendent, obviously, who wants the man to die. So what the superintendent is doing, okay, is that he is equating himself with God. And more than that, actually, he has turned himself into God of the prison. Okay. In this prison, he sees himself as God because he is the one who takes life and he is the one who can pardon someone in another way, in another sense, give life. Okay. Let life be extended. And therefore, you can see, okay, sort of insight into the psychology of like the tyrant. And this occurs, okay, at many levels. On the big scale, this happens in the state where the person who is at the top of the pyramid of the tyranny, the dictatorship, begins to view himself as a god, yeah, as a god over his people, and his people worship him. This is what's happened all throughout time. Look at any look at any dictatorship throughout time, even in this modern time, modern day. For example, look in North Korea, look in China, look in Saudi Arabia. The man at the top, oftentimes, or women at top, whatever, they oftentimes have their picture put all across the place, the city. The kingdom, Saudi Arabia itself is named, the whole country is named after a family. Saudi is a family. Okay, Al Saud is a family. So it's like the country belongs to the family. The people belong to the family. It makes sense. It's beyond just I'm a president or I'm a leader of these people. It's I am God to these people. I am like the heavenly father of these people. Like Hitler over his German nation, yeah, they call him the Führer. It's not just that he's like the prime minister or something. He is the Führer. He is our savior. He is our God, the father of the nation, something like that, yeah. So you can see, okay, the insane ego and the insane level of sort of corruption, self-corruption even, delusion, self-deception, that the person who is on top of the pyramid, that they begin to view themselves in this way. Yeah. They begin to see themselves as not a member of the people, not first among equals, like this quote goes, but to see themselves as above their people. Okay, to see the people as belonging to them, to see them as a possession. Um, and remember as well, one of the key reasons why people dehumanize other people is so that when you kill them, you don't feel bad yet. So, for example, you don't feel bad, okay, if you were to break a stick. Like imagine you see a branch or something on the floor, you pick it up and you snap it, you don't really feel bad yet. You might feel a little bit bad, but you're not really gonna feel bad at all yet. Okay, you break a glass, you drop a glass on the floor, it's like, okay, now I need to buy another glass here. But you don't feel ethically like you've done something wrong, right? You don't feel morally hurt by that. So it's the same thing when you take a human being and then you dehumanize them, you take away their humanity and you say, this is prisoner, this is criminal, this is evil person, this is, uh, and then you give them a bunch of different titles. Yeah, you take away their humanity. So essentially, what that allows the superintendent to do and his guards as well is it allows them to carry out his desires, his abuse, without feeling bad for the people that they're carrying it out on. The only reason that we've even found out about this story, okay, is because the writer decides to write about it. And that's why it's even a big deal at all yet. Otherwise, this would just be something standard practice that went on. Another day in the prison, basically, another day inside the tyranny. Okay. So the superintendent, like I said, he sees himself as a god in the prison, god over the prison, and therefore anything he does, he feels justified in doing. He has no ethical or moral questions. He has no hesitation in carrying out his will. Because again, if he sees himself as a god or God himself, then anything that he believes or wants to do is correct by definition. So that's why you can see, okay, why he abuses power, obviously, because he's not God, obviously, he's just a human being. He's a guy in a fancy suit. Um, yes. So anyway, now what's important to know, okay, and realize is what's important to know and to realize is that every power structure, one sec, the triangle, every power structure, every tyranny that is to say, so corrupt, a tyranny is a corrupt power structure, one where you can't vote yet. Like you have no authority. You have no power, no ability to change who rules you. That's tyranny, essentially. Okay, so every tyranny has someone at the top. Okay, someone at the top. So this could be like a ruling family. This could be like an individual, like a dictator. But there's someone here at the top, like what we just talked about. So in this case, this is the superintendent. Okay, there's one person here. Now, at the bottom of the tourney, we'll say this is the majority. Uh, at the bottom of the tourney, okay, you have all the people who are affected by it, who are ruled by it. Okay, this would be a mixture of citizens and people who are impacted, who may not be citizens, but they're under the rule of the tourney. Okay, so for example, these would be the citizens of Dubai. These would be also the mm, migrant workers of Dubai who live in the slum. In the slum, these would be the Uyghurs in China, and also the citizens of China. These would be the uh, Palestinians in Gaza, and also the citizens of Israel. Both, yeah. Israel's technically not a dictatorship, but to the Palestinian people, I guess it pretty much is because they have no control to get rid of it in terms of voting out or something. Anyway, that's a side point. The point is, okay, you have someone at the top or a small number of people like a royal family at the top, and then you have everyone they control underneath. So these people have no say. Remember, the key to attorney is you have no say, no ability to vote the person in charge out. Okay, so if you live in a democracy, you should be very grateful. Okay, don't think it's a small thing. People had to bleed for you to have that ability. People had to die for you to have that ability. Okay, because these people on top do not want these people who are ruled by them to have power. Why? Because then they would have to share it. They would be moved from here to here. And they don't want to live among the people. They want to stay like gods, at the top. Okay. Anyway, you can see that there's a gap, okay, between the top and the bottom. There's a gap. Now, this is because every dictator or every what they call oligarchy, in other words, like group of people who are in charge, who have power, they can't do it by themselves yet. No dictator acts alone. This is something that you learn if you study political theory, if you study uh, political science. No dictator can act alone. Okay, it's not possible to rule a state, a country, to rule anything, a house, anything which has a lot of people in it, a house, a classroom. Some of your teachers might behave this way if you're in class in school. Your boss might behave this way if you work for someone. So it's not possible, okay, to rule a group of people by yourself. It's not possible because you're one person and they can just overwhelm you. They can beat you up or something, or they can run away and there's too many of them for you to catch. So it's not possible, okay, for you to do it by yourself. So one kind of messed up thing, and maybe it makes it even darker, is that every dictator uh, has henchmen, essentially, if you think about that. Every dictator, okay, has a group of people who support him and who essentially impose his will on the people. Okay, every dictator has what you call like elites or supporters, and they are the ones, okay, who impose his will. He imposes his will on them, and then they impose his will, okay, on the people, on the mass of people. All right. So what we're gonna see now in a second is how the superintendent uses different, and in this case it's the guards. Like he has Francis, who's the head guard, and then the guards in general. They are used as instruments of his will, his abuse. All right. But it's very important to know that the dictator does not rule alone. He can't rule alone. He depends on his elites. And anytime a dictatorship collapses, how does a dictatorship collapse? How does a tyranny fall apart? A tyranny falls apart when these people in the middle stop uh stop carrying out the will of the dictator, okay? And instead they turn on him. They turn on him. And this is when the tyranny collapses essentially. Okay, so when they turn on him and he gets removed, and one of two things happen. Either one of them replaces him, okay, and then you continue the tyranny. It's just a new version of it. For example, you have in countries like in Egypt or different places where you have the dictator replaced by the military. Okay, the military do a coup, and now you have a general in charge instead of a just a political dictator. Now you have a military dictator, so it gets replaced. But alternatively, what can happen is that they don't continue the tyranny, but instead uh, they essentially bring him down, or they collapse. Okay, and then the people rise up. You have a revolution, a civil war, essentially. People rise up, and the elites get made to be answerable. So the dictator gets removed, so this disappears. No more dictator, like in Britain a few hundred years ago when they removed the power of the king. No more dictator, okay? And the elites don't become the new dictator. They don't become the new king. They don't become the new king. But instead, what happens is they become answerable to the people, okay? Which is what you call democracy. This is what you call a parliament. Parliament, huh? And now we get to vote who is the elite. We get to vote them in and vote them out if we don't like them. We get to change them, huh? That's why we have democracy. That's the idea. They represent us. We are the kings. Each one of us is a king over the country, over the nation. That's the idea. That's what democracy is. Do you understand? That's the point. That's the point. It's a wild idea, okay, but it's the only idea which guarantees your personal freedom and your personal protection from abuse and from this structure which I just laid out. Okay, anyway, so what we're gonna see now is how does superintendent, the dictator, how does he use his sort of underlings, how does he use them, his elites, to rule over the prison population? And again, remember, this story is a study of power gone wrong. It's a study of tyranny in states, in countries. Remember, this was written at a time when this was written in about 1920, something like that. And so empires were still, a thing, was still fresh in the memory. The Soviet state was, not the Soviet state, but the communist idea was, starting up or spreading ideas about master race and all that evolution, who's the superior race, who's the inferior race. All those ideas were like floating around you like that. So you need to remember this is the context of what's happening here. So this is not just some kind of theory or fun story that he wrote, but he wrote it based on what he was seeing at the time, taking and experiencing at the time. Make sense? Okay, anyway, so Francis, the head jailer, okay, he's the head jailer, he's the elite, number one elite deputy of the superintendent. A fat Dravidian means person who is actually from that region, yeah, local. He's local to the region that he's ruling over, which is very interesting. In that it means that he is essentially what you could call like an Uncle Tom, in that he is abusing his own people, if you want to put it that way. He is abusing people who look like him, who are from the same place he's from, and essentially you could think he's sold his soul to the dictator. And why did he do that? If you look at how he's dressed, he did it so that he could get some material wealth and power. So oftentimes the elites, this would be like the other royal family members, for example, in Saudi Arabia, or the other members of the Communist Party, for example, in China, the other members of the, don't even know if it's called the Communist Party, I guess, in North Korea. The elites behave this way because they get to eat the crumbs off the king's tables, yeah. They get to benefit, have some power, which the dictator gives to them. Basically, that's the idea. And so they behave this way because in their mind, it's better to be a dog at the table than it is to be like one of those slaves on the floor, yeah. At least the dog gets fed time to time. The slave just gets abused and or killed. That makes sense. So this is the trade they make here. The Faustian bargain that they make. Faustian bargain means to sell your soul in order to get something that you desire. The Faustian bargain that they make is that I will damage and abuse my own people in order to benefit myself in some way. And there's also an element to this which is cowardice, in that if Francis, like these elites, are one of the people who are being abused and killed and all that, then there is an element of cowardice to this, which is that they are afraid of being punished by the dictator. I believe in Saddam's Iraq, what he used to do, I believe this was something, I believe I heard this from the late Christopher Hitchens, yeah. Though he was a great man, yeah. He was a great man. I don't care if you don't like him because he's what he said about religion and whatever, but he was a great man of integrity. I respect him a lot, even though I don't agree with his ideas, but I respect him a lot. In any case, um, rest in peace. I'll say that as well. In any case, what he talked about in one of his speeches, I believe this was based on his own travels in Iraq. Yes, it was like a first-hand thing. Um, what he talked about, okay, was that Saddam back in when he was in charge, when he was in power over Iraq, he would make his elites kill their family members. He would choose one of them to kill a family member, and he would do it in a room. So imagine you have a room like a assembly room, or imagine a room filled with chairs, and then one of the elites gets chosen, and it was on purpose. They wouldn't know who was going to get chosen, and they would shoot their family member in front of everyone else, and everyone else would be made to clap and to pretend like they were happy about it. And they did this, they behaved this way because they were too cowardly, okay, to do otherwise. They lacked courage, huh? Too cowardly. Fear had gripped them. And so it's the same thing here with Francis. If you notice how he talks to, what's his name? Superintendent. Okay, he talks to him like a groveling servant. Huh? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He's almost falling over himself to talk. Yes, he's turned himself into less than a man. And he's done this, okay, and he's done this because he doesn't want to be one of the prisoners. Excuse me. He's bought into the idea, okay, that the most important thing is money or something like that, yeah, material wealth, or the idea of selfishness. Yeah, he's a coward like that. So, and that's what you see in general, yeah, in terms of how power gets abused. It's because people get too afraid to stand up to the dictator, but as soon as people begin to stand up to the dictator, then the whole power structure collapses, basically. That's how it collapses. This is true in a school, this is true in a workplace, it's true in a family. You know, like in a family, maybe the one of the parents is extremely abusive to the family, and it goes on as long as the other parent is too afraid to do something about it. Okay, they're too afraid to, tell them. It may not even be something as extreme as killing, obviously, but it may just be something like they're very mean, or they're verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, whatever. As soon as the other parent begins to say something, okay, they change the dynamic here. They stop being a supporter and an ally to the dictator, and now they become like a check on them. Again, it's extremely important to understand that is why we have democracy. We need to value this thing called democracy because people died for it. Yeah. People died for it because not by choice. It's not as if they wanted to die, yeah, but they died because they had to sacrifice it because the dictator fights extremely hard to keep what he has. Yeah. As soon as a person becomes entrenched in in the way they are in terms of the power they have, okay, you give a man power and make him believe he's a god. He will kill you if you stand against him, yeah. Just like a god would strike you down for disrespecting him, the man who believes himself to be God will also strike you down, so long as he has the power to do so. That makes sense. Okay, so that's the elites, yeah. Now what happens is basically the speaker in visiting the prison, he's essentially just a visitor. Okay, his role in the prison, right, is to essentially inspect what's going on, to just have a look at what's going on. His role is not to take part or to be employed there. That's not his job yet. It's to look what's going on yet. So, but what you notice, okay, is that when he goes into the prison, he eventually becomes sucked into what's going on, and he even becomes part of the killing itself. And so what happens is he says we set out for the gallows, yet he makes no distinction between himself, the guards, and the superintendent. He includes himself in the power structure. And what this what this illustrates, okay, is that sometimes a tyranny can get so strong, and again, I'm not just talking about a state here, like a country, okay, but sometimes a tyranny can get so strong, right, that even people who are just adjacent to it, who are not directly affected by the tyranny, so they're not here, okay, but they're not even inside the thing, they're just here, that they can become influenced by it. Okay, it has like an attractive pull to it, an attractive pull. And that's what's happening here with the speaker. Okay, he is not directly part of the structure, the power structure. He's just there to see what's happening here. But he becomes drawn into it and pulled into it because of good question. Why does that happen? It's a good question. Why does that happen? So you can say that the speaker sort of falls in line or under the trance of the corruption that's going on in the prison. And this happens because there's a natural human desire, okay, to be included in the group. Okay. And we talked about this a little bit with when we discussed in my lecture on Ian Smith's Red Door. Uh, the Red Door. So there's a natural human desire, okay, to be included in the group. And you remember there, if you watch that what I said was when the group becomes more important than the individual, then what you get is what? You get a tyranny. You get a tyranny. You can see this, okay, when, for example, if you remember back to when you were in school, one of the main sort of desires of one of the main fundamental desires that every teenager has, every person has at that age, at that stage in life, is to fit in, yeah, is to fit in and be included, to not be excluded. Now, this desire does not just stop when a person is a teenager or adolescent, but it carries on, yeah, for as long as uh, as long as a person lives. Yeah, there's a very strong inclination and desire to be included, to be part of the group, the tribe, the powerful side. Yes. So when the speaker goes into the prison, he wants to be aligned with the power. He doesn't want to be aligned with the disempowered, the prisoners. And there's many psychological reasons for this. There's many sort of strong uh, reasons for this, but we can just make them simple. And what we can say is what this tells us, okay, is that even good people, or we'll say maybe not good, a good person here would not align himself with the power structure. Let's say even neutral people, I'll put it that way, even neutral people can be strongly influenced by evil if the evil is structured correctly. Even neutral people can be strongly influenced by evil if the evil is structured correctly. So the speaker comes into the prison, he's neutral, he's neither seeing it as good or bad, he's just neutral. And he is influenced by it because the structure is already in place. And so what that does, okay, is that for him to go against it, he would need to do many things which would require more effort, more sacrifice, more personal risk, facing more fear, facing potential consequences than if he just goes along with it. Yeah, than if he goes along with it. This is like in a workplace where the boss is abusing everyone. And remember that Faustian bargain that the elites make? The manager sees the abuse, but they don't report it. They don't say anything about it. Yeah? They just basically go along with it because it takes less personal risk to go along with it than it takes to say something. Understand? So the key here, key takeaway is that uh if and you can see what happens in the story is that the speaker notices that this is very wrong, okay, because he starts to talk about how the person is a human being. I'd never noticed how sort of what it was like to cut short a human life. Yeah. And what you can say is that you don't actually get away from this um, without being damaged. In other words, it's not actually less risk to do this, to behave this way, to just go along with what is going on, the bad thing that's going on. Because what you do, okay, is you make, like I said, a Faustian bargain. And the key with the Faustian bargain, selling your soul to the devil, is that the devil wants something in return. Yeah, the devil wants something in return. He will give you what you want, but he wants something in return. And he will, there's another key to it, which is that he only gives you what you want for a very short amount of time. But in the long term, you are destroyed by it. The original selling your soul to the devil idea was that give me a year or something, give me a short time here on earth of pleasure and of, excitement, enjoyment, wealth, and then I will burn in hell with you for eternity. Yeah, that's the idea. So when the speaker doesn't stand up for the prisoner or the prisoners, he doesn't even say anything. What he does is he loses a part of his soul. Yeah, he corrupts himself in a way which is going to damage him for the rest of his life. Yeah, unless he does something about it to fix it. Does that make sense? For example, you're in a workplace, okay, and let me give you another example, basically a better one. Okay, for example, you're in school, okay, and you know that one person in the class is the bully. We'll call this the dictatorship. They are a bully, okay, of some weaker people, and you know this is happening, all right, but you don't do anything about it because you're scared yourself that you might become a target, something like that, right? Now, what you're doing there by not helping the other person, okay, is you're essentially trading your own respect for yourself to some extent. You're trading in the admiration and the respect and the confidence and the love you could have for yourself in order to stay safe for a little bit. That makes sense. So if you were instead to step to the bully and say, stop, yes, even if something was to happen to you, and I recommend if you're going to do this, another thing that you need to do, okay, is you need to be competent, as in you need to do what is required in order to achieve your goal, yeah. So if you're going to have a revolution, you better have some guns, yeah, basically. Not that I'm saying revolution is a good thing, but the point is, if you're going to have a revolution, you better prepare for it, have some guns, whatever. If you're going to stand against a bully, you better know how to fight, yeah, right? So again, personal self-defense, learning how to fight, how to protect yourself is extremely important. And it's extremely important for these kind of situations, all right? Because again, like I said, tyranny doesn't just happen on a big level, yeah, in terms of the state and all that kind of stuff. Okay, tyranny doesn't just happen and on a country level, but tyranny happens on a small level too, yeah. You get little dictators, little tyrants. You get little dictators and little tyrants, all over the place, yeah. In your life, in different parts of your life. Okay, so if you don't know how to defend yourself, you can't stand up for yourself, then you make yourself a potential victim to someone who will abuse you if they can. That makes sense. So people like this, like the superintendent, they only stop when you stop them. Makes sense. A king only gives up his throne when he is taken from his throne. It's very rare that a king will step down and be like, okay, let's step down and let's change the things, the politics and stuff. And if he does that, he's an amazing king. He's a real king, like an actual what king used to stand for. Yeah, that's what the point, the meaning of it is. But it's very rare. Yeah, a dictator, a tyrant will say, okay, I've had enough of oppressing my people now. Let's do something else. Yeah, let's get everyone to have a vote. Oftentimes these things have to be changed because people say no, like enough, that's enough, right? So it's the same thing in any other situation. Okay, in my own life, and we'll finish this here, but I hope you understand in terms of that power structure. Yes, you have the superintendent on top, dictatorship, tyrant, thinks he's a god. You have his elites underneath who support him, carry out his will, and you have the oppressed people. And this ties in, okay, now to the bottom of the pyramid. Why do they stay at the bottom of the pyramid? Why do they stay here? Why? Why are they just victims? It's because they do nothing. They do nothing, okay, to try and stop being victims. That's why. That's why. Because these people have given up their power. This person at the top abuses his power. People at the bottom give up their power. They consent to be, not consent, but they give up. They give up. They lose hope. They lose the desire to struggle, to fight, and they accept being someone's property, being tyrannized. They accept it. They give up. They lose their will and their courage in their fight. They give up. So, and that is in a sense, they tyrannize themselves, yeah. So, dictator tyrannizes everyone. The elites tyrannize the prisoners. They also give up part of themselves to be in power. And the prisoners, in other words, the normal people, everyday people, they give up completely their power. Because in their head, they don't want to get hurt. Yeah? They're afraid. Yes, they're afraid. And so they give up. And this is the same in any other abusive situation. The abuse only stops when you make it stop. You understand? This is not to say it's your fault, or it's not to say it's the prisoner's fault. It's not to say, and some person may say, well, aren't they a prisoner? Did they do something wrong? I'm speaking metaphorically. It's not to say it's the uh, citizen's fault that they're being abused or tyrannized. But what I'm saying is, if you're being realistic and practical, the abuse only stops when the citizens make it stop. When the average person has had enough and they say, no, no more, done, no more. When the person in the house with the tyrant as a parent says, no more, then that's when something will change. Whether they leave or whether they do something else, whatever, they say, no more. Now, what I was going to say, okay, and I'll finish off with this, is a lot of times my students ask me, how do you know this stuff, or why do you speak about this stuff, etc. I know this stuff and I speak about this stuff, okay, because I've lived it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I've lived it. So the reason why I the reason why I emphasize learning for every individual, especially every single one of my male students. For you, it's not. If you call yourself my student, it's not optional for you. Okay, you need to pick up uh, a martial art. It's not optional. You have to do it. For my female students, I would encourage you to do it. Okay, I would very strongly encourage you to do it because it'll give you more confidence and stuff. But for my male students, you must do it because it's your responsibility to protect not just yourself, but other people around you. It's your responsibility to do this. Okay. So I preach this, okay, because when I was younger, so I grew up in a dangerous place here and a lot of violence, crime, everything you could think of that's bad, pretty much I've seen it. I've experienced it. So growing up in a place like this, you see people getting taken advantage of, you see people being abused, okay? And when I was younger, smaller, I couldn't do anything to help, okay? And that burned me a lot. It burned me intensely. And I always promised, okay, that when I got bigger, I would do something to change it. Huh? I would do something so then I could change it. And what made the difference for me, okay, was learning how to fight. Was learning how to fight. Learning how to protect myself. Martial arts, boxing, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so on. So the difference became that in the past, when something would happen, something simple like seeing someone stealing a bike or seeing someone shouting at a woman, I would freeze because I was terrified. I would freeze. So scared I couldn't even call the police or do anything yet. I was terrified. As I began to learn and I refused to submit to fear, yeah. If I seen something happening, I would walk towards it, not away from it. I refused to submit to fear. What began to happen was I began to be able to step into a situation and help someone who needed help. Understand? So I went from being terrified, afraid, potential victim to being able to experience the inner strength that we all possess. Yeah, I feel good about myself as opposed to feeling bad. Do something good, protect someone, as opposed to feeling like a little coward that ran away, yeah, like that. And it got to the point, if you keep practicing, you, whatever you practice, you become good at. It's gotten to the point now where I don't even think if something happens. I don't even think. Quick example, quick story, and then we'll finish it. So I was in the cinema with a couple friends, and uh, behind me were a group of boys, yeah, probably 18, 19 years old, something like that, 17 years old, something like that. There's a group of them, five of them, something like that. And so they were making some noises and that. They're young, yeah, so just joking around, whatever. Well, the film's going on, they're joking around, you know what I'm saying? Just like young guys do, yeah. But remember, there's a group of them. It's like five or six of them, yeah. Anyway, so um, I don't mind it because they're not hurting anyone. But as soon as I hear them talking and stuff, I don't think there's another story I could tell you which is even more extreme than, but I'll tell you this since I started it. So anyway, they're having a little bit of fun, whatever. So it's fine. The movie's going on. Okay, when the movie finishes and it's silent, out of nowhere I hear someone shouting it, shouting real loud and swearing across the cinema. The cinema's still full of people, by the way, still full of people. You're inside the screen room, the place where they watch film, and a guy has walked from his seat over to where these boys are, and he is now swearing real loud, yeah, swearing real loud, yeah. And the guy is kind of muscular, um, I don't know, a bit tall, not really, but whatever, yeah. And he's mad aggressive, yeah. He's super aggressive, and now the boys stand up, and now they're shouting back, yeah, swearing back. I'm gonna call this person. I'm gonna get this person. What are you gonna do? Blah blah blah. And it's like it's about to kick off, yeah. Without even thinking, okay, I stand up at my seat, yeah. And at this point, no one else has moved. Everyone else is hit by the same fear that I used to get hit with, the same shock, unable to move, yeah. I jump out of my seat, and now I'm standing up, yeah. And I'm looking at him, I'm looking at them. They're in the row up front of me, yeah, so straight, slightly like above, like this. So I'm looking at him, I'm looking at them, and now I'm standing up, yeah, waiting for something to happen. All right, what's gonna happen? If he swings on them, I'm gonna jump over the seat and I'm gonna grab him. If they swing on him, I'm gonna do the same thing, yeah. So I'm not gonna let either one of them uh, hurt the other one, basically. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, so anyway, I don't know if he's, I don't know why, but anyway, the man basically backs up a little bit. He starts to walk and he's like, okay, fine, meet me outside, yeah, to them. Uh, and they're now hyped, yeah. They're like super hyped, talking about, aggressive, this, that, this, that. So I jump over the seat and I address all six of them and I basically calm them down, yeah. I'm like, all right, boys, calm down. And just like a big brother, yeah, because me personally, I didn't think that there was any harm in them. Like, I just think they're just young guys that were having fun, yeah. So anyway, they're like my young brothers, yeah. So I just say to them, all right, calm down and, you know, don't do something stupid that's gonna get you arrested and this, that, yeah. And thankfully they listen, yeah. They don't do anything. They just chill out and they sit down, yeah. My point is, okay, some years ago, I would never have been able to do that. I would have been frozen yet, like everyone else in that cinema. No one else moved yet. No one else moved. They were frozen yet, completely frozen yet. But I felt like a hero yet. And the point is not to feel like a hero. That's not why I did it yet. I did it because it's the right thing to do yet. But you have to choose. Yeah, that's the point. You have to choose. And my advice would be to learn the skills, the tools you need. So if a situation calls where you need to stand up for yourself or someone else, you can do so. Yeah. You can be brave, you can have courage, and at the very least, you can avoid feeling like a coward yet. Because trust me, I still feel the pain of the times that I didn't step in, help someone. So you don't want to be like that yet. It messes you up in a real way. Okay, anyway, So that is the story essentially. You can see how it's an analysis of power and analysis of the individual in relation to abuse and power, corruption, and this is something definitely to think about.